I don't know how, but rockauto.com delivered these KYB struts in less than 24 hours. That seems impossible to me, but thanks so much, rockauto.com. This is called the KYB Strut Plus assembly, and right out of the box it looks like a real high quality product assembled in America, and they're going to be really easy to put in. First thing we need to do, we got to loosen this bolt and these two nuts on the top of the strut tower that hold the strut in place. Now we don't want to take them out completely, we want to leave them there to hold the strut in place when we remove it from the bottom. The car is not jacked up at this point because I want as much pressure from the bottom as possible so that these bolts don't start to spin. And I've already sprayed them with a little WD-40, so this is just a 13mm socket, and these came off really easily. 1, 2, 3. So I'll just leave those there for now, and they'll hold the strut in place when it drops out from the bottom. Now I've jacked up the car and put it on a jack stand for extra support and safety, and if we zoom in a little, right off the bat that fails a visual inspection, but also when I go for bumps it's very harsh, so these things need to come out. The bottom of the strut is held in place by these two big bolts and these big nuts. I've just soaked them with WD-40, and now I'm going to take them off with a big socket. These nuts are pretty tight, but with a big breaker bar, they come off pretty easily. The second nut is behind the brake caliper, so I need an extension to reach it, and it's really tight, so it's going to take a little extra effort. You notice that I left the nuts in place. That's so I can use them to protect the threads on the bolts while I tap the bolts out with a hammer. Right here you can see the great design that Chevy used on these bolts. They're knurled, so when you go to take the nuts off, the bolts don't spin, and that's a great feature. Now I remove the nuts the rest of the way and take the bolts out. It's not always this easy, but this time it was, so thank you, Chevy. Now the strut is totally loose from the spindle, but I'm going to slide one of the bolts back in for a second so we can go up top and remove the two nuts and bolt that are holding it in place up there. Now I can remove the bolt and carefully guide the strut out. Now that I have the strut out of the car, look at the condition of this thing. It's rusty, it's crusty, everything is worn, the boot is demolished. I don't see any leaking, but this thing is obviously bent. Everything is filthy. This strut has given me a great life of service, and I'd like to thank it very much, but it's time for it to go in the scrap pile and be replaced by this KYB beauty right here. Now all I have to do is try and guide the new strut up through those 3 little holes. Wish me luck. Now you may have noticed that I dropped one of the old nuts down into the engine bay, but no need to worry about that because the strut comes with new nuts and a new little bolt. So we'll put those in place and we'll tighten them once the car is down on the ground. Sometimes it's hard to get these bolt holes aligned, but my lower control arm bushings are so worn out that my spindle goes up and down really easily. So stay tuned for a video where I replace my lower control arms. Now I'm going to tap the bolts into place to seat the knurls. Now just put the nuts on, finger tight, and torque them to specifications. Now we just tighten these nuts here, and since my Black & Decker dog bone wrench wanted to be in the video, I'm going to use that. But you should use a torque wrench and tighten them to spec.